talk about your budget and two types of numbers that you may be missing from your budget that are going to change the way you have conversations around money with your board, with your leadership team, and for planning a more robust, sustainable, financially sustainable, and viable nonprofit. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Livieri. I'm a #1 international bestselling author, former executive director, and creator of the Impact Method. And I love helping nonprofit leaders change the way they run their organizations so they can make a bigger impact without getting overwhelmed or burnt out. So, the hole in your budget. Now, those of you who've heard me talk about money before and business models at nonprofits, I like to think that nonprofits are always making mission pie and they're making money pie. And today we're going to be focusing a lot on the money pie piece, because how you write your budget can really change the conversation that you might be having around spending money and ultimately how much money you end up having. And who wants to have, everybody, we know you want to have more mission pie or you wouldn't be a nonprofit, but who would like some more money pie hanging out and to do with at their nonprofit? Give me a hi or a yes in the chat if you would like to have more money pie going on. Yes, we got some raised hands. I love it. Excellent. Yeah, we always money pie. Money makes the world go round. It's not everything, but it sure does help. So how can we get that money pie? Well, here's what often happens. And let me know, give me a raised hand or a hey or a me in the chat if this is you. We write our budgets. Obviously, this is really simplified. We list the income, we list the expenses, and then we tally up the difference. And if it's negative, we look right at that bottom line. And if it's negative, we go, we freak out. If it's positive, we're like, okay, not so bad. But if it is negative, you start having this conversation. We need to cut the budget, which means reducing expenses. And there's a good reason for that, right? Have you had this conversation that we need to cut the budget and you're looking at the bottom line conversation? Give me a hi or me, that's me, if you've had this conversation at your organization. And the problem is, and the reason why this happens is that we often, what is $287,000 really anyway? I don't know. I've used some small numbers in this budget, but it's hard for our brains to know, but we can know that how the income and the expenses are related to each other, that matters, how much money we end up with at the end of the day. And since the only area in this budget where we really talk about how the income and expenses are connected is that bottom line, that's really the only conversation we can have. But the reason why you are having this conversation is because there's a hole in your budget. Your bucket. Who knows that song? There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. Anyway, so this song goes on to create this circular problem. And because there's this hole in your budget, you're actually having less money pie. And so we can change the conversation, which will in turn likely change how much money pie you have in your budget. So what is this hole? Well, there's actually two things you're probably missing, or at least one of them you might have in another location. And these are direct expenses and percentages. I love percentages because when we look at percentages, excuse me, we are comparing apples to apples. And direct expenses are things in kind of the traditional like manufacturing world of business or making goods. We have this line called cost of goods. We don't often have cost of goods, the cost to make a product in a nonprofit, but we certainly do have direct expenses for delivering programs. And I really want you to be looking at those direct expenses as part of the big picture and not lumping them in just as one big expense category, because that doesn't help us figure out what's what. So let's take a look at this in a budget. So here I have the same numbers we were looking at before, but now I've added in some direct expenses And I've added in some percentages here in these kind of yellow columns. So we know that we're bringing in 284,849. The direct expenses are a little over 199,000, and then 30% is left over from the amount we started with. 30% of the money pie that came in is left over to pay the operating expenses. And then we look at the very bottom, we say, well, that negative $2,251 that are left over, that's negative 0.8% of the total money pie came in. Now that's still not good, but all of a sudden, I'm not so focused on this negative $2,000 like I was before. And I'm starting to think about some other questions that I might ask other than just crying out, we need to cut the budget. So what other questions might we be talking about as we talk about how much pie is left over compared to how much pie came in? Or another way of framing the question is, how good are you at having money pie left over? And I'll tell you a quick story. There was a time when I was a kid, I think I was in like maybe second or third grade, and my mom would pick me up from the bus coming home from school, and she would have just come from the grocery store, and my dad would still be out, and she would pull out a very big chocolate brownie. Now, my mom's actually really good with numbers too. But she would say to me, Sarah, we have to eat this entire brownie before your dad comes home, so he never even knows there was a brownie, right? So in this case, we were making sure that this how much money pie is left over to how much money pie came in, that my dad never knew that there was no brownie left over because he never knew that the brownie came in the first place. But we don't do that at nonprofits. We don't hide the money coming in. That's totally illegal and wrong. But you can see how important this question is. Now, I want to take it a step farther and show you how this conversation can go, right? So we have a conversation. You look at the bottom line, right? It's negative. Okay, but that's not the only thing you're looking at anymore. Now you're asking yourself, because you have these other numbers to focus on, how much money pie came in and how good are we at having money pie left over? Well, if you take your budget a step further and you break out your program A and your program B, and we can talk about what these might be in a moment, you're gonna start having some really different conversations. So let's just take a quick look here. If you look at this, put in the chat for me, which program A or program B, is better at making money? Which one is better at making money? Which one does a better job at making money? Is it A or is it B? Put it in the chat. Which program is better at making money? And why am I asking this question while you put your answers in? B, we've got one answer in B. Yes, Mary Jane, you are correct. You get the prize of knowing you were right. Program B is better at making money. And so that leads me to two potential conversations around the budget. Instead of worrying about cutting the budget, I say, well, if program A is not as good at making money as program B, well, what could we do to make program A better at making money? That's a meaningful conversation we could have. Or another conversation we could have is, well, program B is so good at making money. How can we do more of program B? How can we actually invest in program B so we can do more of it because it's really, really good at making money pie? In fact, maybe in this case, program B is our fundraising program, right? We absolutely want to increase the direct expenses for that so that we can have more money pie coming in, because this is a money pie making machine, program B. And you see how this conversation now is totally different. We're not even thinking about cutting expenses. We're saying, what can we do to make more money pie? And usually that can involve spending more, but it can also involve changing something about how you work. So what are the kinds of things that you can change, right? I like to break these up into the ingredients and the process, right? So this is where you're income generating expenses come in, things that you can spend money on that cause even more money than they cost to come in. So this is often marketing expenses, fundraising expenses, development staff. If you hire people or you just have more people available to do the work of making money pie, buy more ingredients, more marketing, more advertising, more reach overall, more networking. And this is where spending more money will make more money pie. But there's another piece of the equation that you can talk about as well. And if you do both these conversations, you will really have a great success in making money pie. So the other conversation has to do with your process, your tools, your method of making money pie. And this often relates to scalability, your recipe. So here's a classic that the pro fundraisers know, that a lot of organizations do some sort of big fundraising gala or fundraising events to make money pie. The problem with these is they're actually not that, they don't leave that much money pie left over compared to how much money went in, how much money pie went in. And they're not scalable. You can get them to a certain size and then you can't get them any bigger. So maybe you need to change your method or your recipe for making money pie so that you can make even more money pie with the same amount of ingredients, right? Or maybe you need different tools. I chose a picture here, right? If we're following the baking metaphor, you might need to up level the tools available to you. Do you need a bigger mixer, right? Because if you're making one pie at a time, you're only going to make so many pies in a day. You got to start doing it in bulk in order to scale your ability to make money pie. So those are the conversations that you really need to be having in order to be just filling your bucket with money pie. Is because when we have more money, we can make a bigger impact. But remember, we don't just want to spend our money pie on making an impact. We always want to make sure that some of our money pie is also going into making more money pie so that we have this vibrant, sustainable experience. So for those of you who would like to hop on a call with me and talk one-on-one instead of the Q&A we're about to have, you're welcome to apply for a free consultation if you haven't done so already. And if you would like a complete budget template with all of these kinds of numbers and the formulas already in there, you can go to pivotground.com/budget-template, and I have a free template ready for you to start using. Now, if you're watching the recording, I'd love for you to take a moment to subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is growing in such a lovely way, and turn on the notifications. And for those of you who have shown up live, I'd love to hear your key takeaways, and we're going to move on over to the Q&A portion.